trainer or someone who's an engineer working on real world problems? Let's, just make the session a quite, engaging and a bit more interesting. Either you guys unmute yourself or just, give a thumbs up or a, the smiley emoji if you think that, the trainer or the engineer could be the option.
Engineer.
All right. Anybody else? I mean, that's particularly someone, their own choice. Like, so who would you consider, like a trainer or the engineer? Okay, I'm getting a guys. At least just drop a thumbs up if you think like it's if it's a trainer or a smile emoji if you think it's an engineer. So anyway, just see, while the trainers are great at teaching concepts, but there's something unique about learning from someone who's been in the industry for quite some time. I hope you're agreeing with it, right? Solving actual industry challenges.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bean. Thank you for responding. I got to know like someone is listening to me. Thank you so much. Yeah, just give me a thumbs up who all agrees with me. Okay. All right. So, okay, fine. Let me introduce you to your engineer for the day. Yeah. Meet Mr. Swami. Your expertise for today's session with over 12 years of hands-on experience in the industry. So basically, he brings the perfect combination of industry knowledge and teaching expertise, making sure you not only understand the concepts, but also know how to apply them in the real world. So now let's just take a look what we will be covering today. So first of all, you'll be getting to know about what is DevOps. So we will be breaking down the core principles and the key concepts that make DevOps such a revolutionary practice in today's IT world. All right. And secondly, we will, get to know about how to build a career in it. So we will dive into how you can manage the existing knowledge and skills about DevOps and transition it into a successful DevOps career, basically. And thirdly, you'll get to know about the future prospects, and you will explore the immense opportunities DevOps presents for the future and how you can position yourself to take advantage of it. All right. And last but not the least, see, these are the, I would like to share some feedback from our students who have actually completed the programs with us. So these reviews showcase the value of the program and how it has helped the professionals like you advance in their career. So that's all from my side. It's just a brief introduction about the program. I hope all the best and happy learning. Over to you, Swami.
Thank you, Ritika. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Swami, you are. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. All right, team. So very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I mean, I'm not sure which time zone you're joining in with. If you're from India, I'm sure it's evening time. But yeah, otherwise, if you're joining in from other time zones, I'm sure it might be afternoon or morning as well. So team, I hope I'm audible. Can you please confirm in the chat box? Let me just see if you can make use of the chat box as well. Let me just see if you can hear me. Everyone, those that are part of it. Even you can unmute yourself. I hope you have that option. Let me just hear it from your end now. Those that are joining.
Yeah, it's clear.
Audible, right? Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So team, as Kritika told, our learning is going to be our today's session. In fact, the webinar that we are having, it will be around the DevOps and some of the important aspects of it that in today's world, in fact, DevOps, everyone is looking for that. Everyone is looking for setting up automations. Everyone is looking for basically going for containerizations and making the most out of their development life cycles. Now, in that regard, it's expected the industry is looking for certain skills, and they are expecting you to be aware of the most common and most popular tools out there, right? So yes, that's what is going to be the overall learning as a part of this course. But Anyway, for today's session, let's just focus our discussion on the DevOps, right? The word itself. So, yes, just a brief or quick introduction from my end. Just give me a second. Let me just share my screen there. I'll give you a brief introduction. In fact, Kritika has given you, but just a quick one. So DevOps is something that I'll be there with you. I mean, I'll be discussing with you. All right. This is me, as Kritika told. Yes, I hold 12 plus years of experience in the DevOps field, working as a trainer, working as a consultant, and working as a cloud engineer. In fact, entirely rather in the AWS field. I mean, these are the AWS certifications right now, just focusing on that right now. Again, having some from Azure and GCP as well. But again, talking about it more, you see, I hold expertise into DevOps domain, and that's what we'll be discussing as a part of going further. Now, team, before we discuss anything or go for it, the very first thing that we have to discuss as a part of our discussion is going to be this word, as Kritika told, and I really like your views on this. We'll discuss this too, and then we'll take it further. Okay. So the word that we are so much interested in learning is, as we call it, DevOps. Right. So team, before we discuss anything further, I would really like to know from your end, what is your idea of DevOps? What comes to your mind when you hear this word DevOps? Everyone, let me hear it from your end. You can unmute yourself and we can start discussing that further. Yes, team. Anyone? What is your? I mean, I'm sure everyone joining here have heard this word one or the other time, and in fact, I'm sure you must have heard it a lot of times before, and you might have worked on this particular domain as well. But still, let's just see. What is your view on that? Let me just know that, everyone.
I mean,
Yes,
the integrated development and operations, like QA and everything, integrated development operations together.
Correct. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. You're saying something.
They integrated these things together so that they become a part of one team who are taking care of all from development to implementation and
Great.
operation. Yeah.
Great.
Like CI/CD
Very well. Very well, Beam. Exactly, team. I'll just pick up the very first thing that Beam told, and I'm sure everyone would agree on that. Is it has something to do with development, and we said operations, right? Right, and again, Beam was saying further as well that there is a concept of CI/CD somewhere, right? So yes, you said CI/CD, taking it into this integration, taking it further into the life cycle. All right, team, anyone else would like to add to what Beam told? In fact, we'll be exploring this in a minute, but yeah, anyone, if you'd like to add to what Beam told? Yes, what is your view on that? We'll discuss what this development is, what this operations is. Don't worry, we'll have a look at that as well. And I'll also brief out some of the very popular things that are out there and the best practices and all. Just a quick introduction to this fantastic word of DevOps, as we call it. Yes, team, anyone? Please quickly. Abhinash, I think your mic is on. In fact, if you're talking to me, I'm not able to hear you. All right. Yes, team, anyone else? How about Kumar Swami, Mahesh, Vaibhav, Vikas?
Hello.
Yeah. Kumar,
this is Kumar. This is Kumar. See, before the software company is using this waterfall model, first we gather the requirements, then designing, then developing, testing, then deployment. All those things will be done in this series. Now, to reduce the cost of the project as well as time, this DevOps concept has begun.
Great, Kumar. Very well. In fact, you mentioned, I'll just pick up few words that you mentioned there. For example, cost is something that you mentioned. Waterfall is something that we mentioned. Very well. Team, we'll discuss on all these aspects, like even Kumar told, and even just a while back, we discussed with Beam as well. Very well. We'll discuss that in further. Anyone else would like to add to something to that before we start discussing it? Yes, team. Anyone else would like to add to this discussion? What is your view on it? I'm sure some other thing I'm sure must be coming to your mind, right? When you hear this word, let it be a repetition of that only, but just be a part of this discussion. Yes, team. Anyone else? Anything else that you can think of? Because DevOps, we think of it like a big giant, or rather we call it a big elephant, right? It's like when you're discussing DevOps, there are many aspects to it, right? And it's a combination of all of that kind of we call it as a DevOps, right? But yeah, very well told. In fact, Beam and Kumar, they have told some really important pointers. Anyone else, if you'd like to add something to that? Otherwise, I'll take it further from here. Okay, all right. No issues. So team, as first of all, I'll talk about as what Kumar told just a while back. Yes, the companies, they have been struggling with basically the development life cycles and everything, right? And over the time, the cost, the time, the efforts that they were putting in, it was not so efficient as we saw over the time, right? And that's where somehow DevOps came into picture. In fact, Kumar kind of called out one particular term, waterfall. In fact, that's really something that was kind of a big issue earlier. In fact, the companies, the organizations, they were kind of getting frustrated over the time. And you see, now today, you see, with advent of many tools, technologies, services, platforms, we are using DevOps a lot. Okay, but team, before we discuss anything of this, okay, whether it be waterfall or DevOps or anything, it's important to understand few of the basics. Okay, so I'll just put a simple scenario in front of you, and with that, we'll see what basically or why it's important to understand DevOps before we take it any further. Okay, now team, I have a simple question for all of you. Okay, let's just say that you are the employee of your company. Okay, you're working for an XYZ organization. Okay, and your manager comes up to you and says that, okay, I'm just making sure that everyone can get along. And even if you have not heard of DevOps word before, you would get a better, at least some idea before I explore the thing further. Okay. So just say your manager comes to you and tells you that, okay, Swami, we have a task and I want you to create an application for me. In fact, let's just add a few more of us to that, okay? Because might not be the job of a single person, right? Let's just say we have a bunch of people in our organization, the employees. And our manager is saying that, okay, team, we want to create an application or a software, okay, that our entire global users, they can use it. Okay. So what happened there is, you see, our manager had an application in the mind, like, for example, Facebook. Okay. The manager was thinking about an application like Facebook, and it's the job of we as a team to prepare that application for ourselves. Okay. Now, team, here, let me just take this from your end. Okay. Let's just say this kind of task has come up to you. What will be your thought process behind it? Or how will you approach this particular problem? What are the steps involved in this process? Can anyone tell me? What is your view on this? Let's just discuss it with that and then take it further. Yes, team, anyone? What's your view? The manager has come up to you and he has told or she has told that we want to create an application like Facebook from scratch. Okay, I mean, just assume that Facebook was not existing back then. Okay, it's just an hypothetical example. And now it's your job as a team to figure out the overall process of creating an application that the entire globe can use. Yes, team. Anyone? Yes. Yes, Rakesh, is it? Who is it? I think someone was having their mic on. Please give your views here. Okay, we'll discuss it. Don't worry. It's not about right or wrong. It's more about discussing it through. And I'm sure no one of you will be entirely wrong. I'm sure about that. Yes, team. Anyone? What will be the very first thing? I'll give you a very non-technical example. Think about like you have identified a place in your city, and I mean, let's just say, I mean, in the metro cities, we rarely get the empty places, no? But yeah, still, let's just assume that you have got your place of your own, and you are willing to set up your own house there. Right? A non-technical example. Right? You are willing to set up your own house there on that empty space. Now, what is the thought process that's behind it? Anyone? What would you do first? Do you go directly and start building the house? What is your idea? What is your view on that? Yes or no? Do you go directly and start building the house? Yes, team?
No, first we need to get the permission from BBMP.
Yes, we'll have to get the permissions. We'll have to make sure that we are allowed to set up our house there. Okay, so let's just say that you have done that. Okay, you have got all the permissions, you have got all the clearance. Okay, you can set up your house there. Okay, now what will be the very next step, Kumar? What do you think? What should we do next?
Next, we hire an architect to design.
Right. Exactly. That's what. So as Kumar is saying, team, correctly, we have to plan it out, no? The very first thing will be to understand the kind of house we are going to plan. I mean, as Kumar told very correctly, we'll require kind of an architect who will help us in that process, for example. But the idea is in the technical example as well. Okay, it will be kind of the requirement gathering, right? We'll be understanding the actual requirements. You'll plan it out, right? You'll discuss with your family, okay, what kind of house shall we build, right? How many floors should be there? How many rooms should be there? Okay, what direction should it be there, right? And in fact, we know, I mean, how superstitious we are. At times we discuss the things and we plan it out, right? After understanding the actual requirements. So requirements plus analysis, right? So, and ultimately after that, what we do is we do the planning of it, right? So we plan it out. We set up the design around it. So we'll hire our architect there and ask the architect to set up the blueprint of our house. Same goes in the technical example as well. For example, like Facebook, you'll understand the requirements from your manager, do the analysis on top of it, and then you will plan it out. Like, okay, how am I going to build it? Isn't it? What kind of programming language, what kind of framework, what kind of technology, what kind of resources am I going to use for this application? Same goes with your house, isn't it? We set up what kind of raw material, what kind of bricks, what kind of overall things that we're going to use to build our house. Isn't it? Now, team, I'll take it up one step further because this is where it becomes a lot more relevant with our discussion. Right? Now, we want to actually start building our house. Right? Or in this case, we want to actually start creating this Facebook-like application. So, starting just like in the case of our house, we will ask our workforce, I mean, the people who are there to build it, after giving them the plan, they will start to build your house, right? Same goes with the technical example. We want to start building our Facebook application. Right? What would be the first step, team? Can you guess it? Anyone? What is the very first thing? I mean, who will actually be the builder of that house? Who will be that actually person who will start building your Facebook application? Yes, team, anyone? What do you guess? Yes, Mahesh.
Developer.
Exactly. Very well. Exactly. So, team, here comes the actual, I mean, one of the hero of this overall movie. Okay, so here we have the developer. Isn't it? Developer actually begins it actually initiates this process, right? Developer using its own machine and its own platform, he or she will start to write the application code for us. Okay, and this is where it all begins in the technical world, right? And now what will the developer do at times? Because you see, I mean, in reality, one file will not be, one developer is not enough, right? We'll have multiple developers working on the project and such. So Instead of keeping this code in our own machine, we will rather keep the code, for example, in a code repository, right? We have it like Git repository, GitHub, Bitbucket, isn't it? I'm sure you must have heard of those terms before, right? And then, team, there is an entire process that starts after this. Any idea, team, what will be the next, team, after you have done the coding part of your application? What could be the next, team? Any guess? Coding is done. Let's just say your developer is done with the coding. Yeah, yes, Kumar or
Testing.
Mahesh. Yeah.
Testing.
Testing, exactly. We have to test it out, right? But at times there is one small thing we do before that as well. We call it building your code as well. So at times, no, your code is not entirely complete. You have to create some intermediate artifacts or softwares or intermediate output sometimes, compile your code. For example, let's just say you are working with a Java code.
Before
You may
that,
have to-
before
Yeah.
that, we need to do unit testing.
Exactly. So testing, no, testing in fact, it happens throughout this process. So there will be testing here. There will be different kind of testing here. In fact, testing is one thing that happens throughout this process, isn't it? Not only static, in fact, not only unit testing, you have to also do static code analysis as well, isn't it? You have to do component testing. You have to do integration testing as well, right? So different kinds of tests are there, but those will happen throughout the process, right? So yeah, building is there, by the way, where we are building our application code in order to, for example, compiling the code, creating intermediate artifacts, creating intermediate outputs, isn't it? For example, you have a Java application code, you have to convert that into a WAR file. You're working with containers, you may want to convert that into, let's just say, a Docker file, converting into Docker image, right? So build is a important process within that. And then after, we formally do the testing of our code. Now, yes, as I told, and in fact, just now, as Kumar, I think, said as well, that testing has to happen throughout, right? Isn't it? There are different kinds of tests happen, but just to formally include it at one place, I've just mentioned test. But remember, team, testing happens throughout the process, right? Now, thereafter, what we will do, so our code is all tested. We have gotten our code. Now, you see, we have to provision some infrastructure, right? Because you see, software part is done until here. Isn't it? We are done with the software part, right? Now, here we will provision our hardware. Because you see, even though you have to run Facebook, it has to have server, right? Underneath where it will run. Right. So you require hardware where it will run, your servers, your databases, your storage. In fact, overall, the setup that's required to run your Facebook, you will provision that. And finally, what you will do is you will run this software onto this hardware. That's what we refer to it as the deployment of your code. And there's one small thing that happens afterwards is monitoring. Monitoring as in? So let's just say our Mark Zuckerberg has deployed the Facebook and he has gone for vacation. That could not be the thing, right? I mean, after that, he has set up an entire team and I mean, you know how it all started. But overall, the idea is that you have to continuously monitor whether the things are working the way you want or not. So monitoring helps you make sure that the things are working well. Now, team, I'm sure you must be all scratching your head. Why are we discussing this? The very reason for that is, if you see the discussion, we started off with DevOps, right? And I wanted to give an idea of these two words involved in DevOps, because that's where it all begins. Development and operation. What is these two terms? Then only you will get to know what DevOps is. So here, what we are doing is, you see, at least you have seen the first person that's part of that DevOps word, which is developer. Okay. And the second entity that you saw there, we call it the operations team. Okay. So what is the job of operations team? Developer's job, you have understood, right? Developer's job is to develop the code, making sure that you get the best quality code there. The operations job is whatever the code the developer has developed, it will take up that code from there and make sure that the code can be deployed to the market as a final product, making sure that the code or your application is stable and reliable, making sure to evaluate your application code and make sure that it can be deployed onto production, make sure that everything that goes wrong in the production, you have to take care of it. So team, operations team job is a lot. I mean, I cannot compare it with the developer because developer as well, they work very hard, but operations as well, they have to take that further from developers and make sure to put it into market, make sure that Facebook is running well, make sure that the destination platform that you have set up, the hardware and everything, that's all working well. And your application can run there, and make sure that it's continuously running well as well. So what I wanted to convey here at this first discussion is that there are two teams which are important in this process. And by the way, this process is what we refer to it as software development life cycle. Okay. So team, here is the idea. You see, DevOps is about, earlier what used to happen with this, even waterfall model is there. There's some agile model that is there, Scrum, Agile, and sprints. In the earlier models, or in the earlier kind of software development life cycles, as I've just told, there was inefficiencies in terms of developers working with operations. There used to be quarrels. I mean, in fact, I'm just putting it an analogy, but kind of the problem was that there was a lack of communication. Okay. Lack of communication between the dev and the ops over the years. And DevOps is filling that gap. DevOps, because you see how important these two teams are. And if they don't work hand in hand, that's going to be a problem, right? And that will reflect the problem. The problem will reflect, or that issue will reflect in the final production as well. So that's what we don't want. So team, this is just a beginning. In fact, that's what this course will make you aware of. That's what this course will tell you, is what was that waterfall model? What was that agile model? Or what is that? In fact, even today we use waterfall and agile. And why DevOps is so important, and how does it fill that gap between developers and operations, which the waterfall and agile could not. Okay. And what are the best practices that we have within DevOps, which onboard you with this fantastic, we call the DevOps team, by the way, as a culture, DevOps culture. Remember, it's a DevOps culture, as we call it. Why? Because it's not a tool, it's not a service, it's not a method, rather it's a culture. Now, why I'm saying it as a culture, literally you will see as we'll go ahead with this course, is it will fill the gap. It will basically, it is not only the service tool or technology, it is more of the mindset that's getting shifted. I mean, we are just literally working psychologically as well at times with the teams to make sure that they work together. But that's the fun part, and that's the interesting part. We cannot just discuss it in just some time like this. We'll have to take it through, and we'll have to kind of discuss it in detail as we'll move ahead. But timing, what I just wanted to give an idea is what DevOps is all about. DevOps is all about making sure that this development and operations are working together. Now, I've just given you the idea what development and operations are. In fact, what these two teams are all about, why they are so important, why, and in fact, you see, it is all revolving around the software development lifecycle. It can be any software, by the way. You can be working for any company, any organization, right? Which are in the industrial, which are in the domain of software or their own product, or setting up their own softwares, or making sure that they are working hand in hand, right? So that's what team will be exploring as a part of this course, this learning, is how basically we can make sure that the problems that the earlier models had, waterfall or agile, how can we feel, or how can we kind of get over those problems? How can we make sure that our development and our operations teams can work hand in hand? What are the best practices under DevOps culture? And believe me, it's not an overnight job to move from waterfall to DevOps or agile to DevOps, because that's an entire culture that you have to inculcate in your organization. And then only you will say that, okay, I am, or our organization is working as a DevOps, or working in the, or following the DevOps culture. Okay. So team, I mean, I'm really excited to discuss all of these things with you, but it will take some time. We'll have to spend some time and overall, we'll have to discuss it through with the comparisons and understand the real value behind it. But I hope team, you have got an idea what DevOps is all about. That's what I wanted to kind of brief you around, is why we are going for this fantastic word of DevOps, and why the companies and organizations, they're all looking for a person who is kind of aware of the DevOps culture. Okay, and that's what team will be exploring as we'll move ahead with this particular course. Any doubt, team, until here, if you have, before I discuss this further? I hope the things are all clear until now. Thumbs up would be great. Let me just see how many of you can use thumbs up there. Do you have that option, by the way? I'm just not sure. We are using Zoom there. So I hope it's all clear, everyone, until now. The concept of development and operations and why they are so important. I'm assuming it is clear. If you have any doubt, you can always unmute yourself and I can discuss it further with you. All right, great. Excellent. Yes, team, let me just know it. I think I don't see thumbs up set. Can you please make use of chat box? Just say yes or why. Let me just see how many of you are there in the session. Let me just see how many of you make use of the chat box. Just say why or yes. If the things are fine until now. If you have understood what I've just now discussed, before I take it further. I can see it from Avinash. How about others, everyone? I know, I'm as well so lazy to type in everything. So you can just put why there as well. That will be even fine with me. Everyone, let me just see if you are there and if you're listening to me. Great. Now getting some responses. Very well. I thought evening time you must have had your dinner and all and might not be as attentive. But good to see that you are all. Great. Excellent. All right, team. So this is what I meant. DevOps is a fantastic word in itself. It's a culture in itself. In order to get yourself onboarded with it, in order to get your organization onboarded with it, it's an entire process, or it's rather an entire culture that you have to inculcate. And there are best practices, there are tools, services, and cultural philosophies as well, which when you adopt in the real sense, then we can say that you are on DevOps. Now, after discussing this, team, if I just take up the slides, the help of slides a bit. You see, this is a training that will be going for anyone who is willing to get upskilled on DevOps tools and technologies. The early sessions will be discussing what or why we are going for it and the real value and the benefit of it. And then as we'll move further, we'll see for the different tools that are being used in order to, because these are the tools, team, believe me, if you just look out for the job descriptions and look out for even for your upskilling as well, the companies, they are looking for individuals who are aware of these commonly used and very popular tools and services. Right. So let's just see what we have there. So the technology areas that we focus on in this DevOps domain, they go under automation, containerization, configuration management. These are the three areas that we'll be highly focusing on. Okay, because as we'll see further with the DevOps has this foundation on some of these best practices. Right? These are some of the, you can say, the symptoms or rather the characteristics of a modern DevOps architecture or a modern DevOps application. Okay. Now, talking about it, the kind of tools and services that one is expected to be aware of as a DevOps engineer or as a learner more of. Okay, so let's just see what kind of services and what kind of understanding you are expected to have. The very first thing, as we discussed, is what is DevOps and why it is so important. So we have just scratched the surface for now, but as we'll go in the actual course and actual learning of henceforth, we'll be actually deep diving into this concept of DevOps. What is that? Why is it so important? And how it is better than the existing counterparts. Okay. Now, after that, we will be understanding this DevOps in various angles and in various ways or in various perspectives. Okay, the way, in fact, you see, as I've told you, DevOps is that big elephant, right? So yes, if you touch upon the tail, you might think, let's just say, that example, if you are blindfolded, if you don't know what's in front of you, if you touch on the tail of the elephant, you might think that it's a snake. If you take if you touch on the leg of the elephant, you might see that it's a stem of a big tree, isn't it? So it is kind of that. Okay, DevOps has to be learned with various ways and various tools and various best practices. Okay, so as I'll be discussing now, these are the very things that we'll be discussing, or these are the very things that are expected out of you as a part of a DevOps, as a part of upskilling yourself on the DevOps world, in the DevOps, in fact. So the very first thing, team, we'll be discussing are some of the Linux commands, because believe me, as we'll move further and as we'll get started, in fact, not even move further, but as we'll get started with the DevOps, the very first thing that we'll be requiring is to set the overall things up, right? I mean, you know, we make use of, just a second. All right. So like I was saying, that as you know, nowadays, we make use of different cloud platforms, right? We make use of different cloud platforms. Now, in order to set yourself for the DevOps, right? Okay. For this overall configuration, okay, you can make use of different operating systems, isn't it? You can make use of Windows, you can use Linux, you can use Mac, right, as your operating system for getting onboarded. But you will see, team, with the from the efficiency point of view, you will see that most of the servers and most of the platforms, they highly make use of Linux platforms a lot. Okay, they bring in the efficiency required. Even the tools are more often than not supported, isn't it? And they're easy to go along with as well for the integration purpose in the future. So considering all of that in mind, you will see that the companies, the recruiters, the even from the upskilling point of view, you will see that it is expected that you are aware of the basic understanding. You are expected that you are aware of the basics of Linux a bit. Okay. Now, we are not going to discuss the operating system point of view a lot. Okay. But we'll be understanding from the important commands. Okay. What are the different commands that we can use it in the Linux? What are the different kind of platforms that we can? Yes, security as well. Exactly, Kumar. Security, again, is one of the major reasons why Linux is being used. So the very first thing that we'll be understanding in order to set up our overall DevOps environment, we'll be understanding a bit about Linux a bit. Isn't it? The commands, the kind of environment that we have it in Linux, the different things that we can carry out under that, all of that will be the very first thing. Then we will see for another aspect of it. In fact, in that pipeline that we discussed, or that software development lifecycle that we discussed, I have discussed this aspect about. Now, intentionally, you see, I have not mentioned anything here. Can you identify these logos? If you can. Let me just see if you can. I'll give you 1 minute to think over this. Intentionally, I've just kept it blank, just so that I want you to guess around what kind of tool are we learning here in the very next step. Yes, team, what do you say? Great, Weber found it very well. So team, exactly, excellent. SCM, very well, Mahesh. So team, as a part of that process that we discussed now, you see, our discussion will be revolving around this process, isn't it? This is, as we call it, software development life cycle. Now, as a part of that, we will be understanding the various things that are mentioned here individually to see how we can set up this overall pipeline or the overall life cycle efficiently. That's what the DevOps is all about, isn't it? Setting up the software development life cycle in the best way possible. So that's where the very first thing, as you can see over here, is the code, right? We have to make sure, as I've told you, we have to keep our code intact. We have to keep track of all the things that have happened on it, all the overall evolution of our code and everything, right? And that's where we require a sophisticated source control management system for that, right? We also refer to it as VCS, version control systems, right? And there are many more. You see in the market, we can see that there are many such source control management system. You might have heard like Bitbucket, you might have heard like S3, you might have heard like GitLab. But the one that we'll be focusing on, which is a very common and very popular, is Git. Okay, so we'll see what is Git. In fact, we'll be exploring GitHub as well. Okay, and don't worry, we'll discuss all of that. What is the difference between Git and GitHub? How it can be used. We'll be literally understanding it from creating an account there, signing up to GitHub. What is the difference between centralized and decentralized source control systems and VCS rather, right? So that's an aspect that we'll be covering here. The very first thing, because you see in the life cycle as well, this is the very first thing. That's where it is all getting started. So this is the importance we'll be covering here. We'll be understanding how we can work with this code repositories, as we call them, how we can get started with it, what kind of Git workflow is there, what kind of commands we can use there, how we can manage the Git and GitHub, and what's the difference and everything. Okay, so this is the very first thing that will be part of our discussion. Now, team, I'm sure most of you should be able to identify this person. Can you tell me who is this? Again, I have intentionally just deleted the name of it or any information relevant to it, just so that you can identify this particular gentleman. Who this gentleman is? Yes, team. Everyone, I'm sure you must have seen this person one or the other time, and I'm sure you must have seen him many times before. You see, I've got a response from Mahesh. Very well. How about others? What do you think? Who this gentleman is? Right, don't worry. Even if you're not aware of it, totally fine. But yes, Mahesh, you're exactly correct. This person, this gentleman team, we refer to him as, just a second. This gentleman, we call him Jenkins. Okay, Jenkins team, I'm sure whether you have used it or not, whether you are associated with development, operations, DevOps or not, but I am 100% sure that everyone that's part of this training has heard of it. Might not be aware what it does and everything, but I'm sure you must have heard it some other time. And that's how big and that's how popular this particular tool is. Okay, we call it Jenkins. Now, Jenkins team, we're going to explore this in detail too. We're going to see how we can set it up from scratch. We're going to see how it helps us in setting up our DevOps environment. And believe me, this is a one service for many kind of tool wherein it lets you do a lot of things for you. It kind of helps you in many aspects of DevOps. Okay, so maybe you see, for example, from the planning point of view, maybe from example, I mean, coding is something that we don't often use it for, but yeah, from the building point of view, from let's just say testing point of view, let's just say releasing point of view, deployment point of view, operations point of view, monitoring point of view. So believe me, Jenkins can replace all other tools in a nutshell, if I want to say, because it has that capability of doing. So it's so powerful tool that, and it has evolved so much over the time with the brilliant minds around that it can help you in many aspects of your pipeline. Okay, so you see, taking up the planning on it, making sure to build your code, test your code. You see, many things, or most of the things that I've mentioned on the whiteboard: build, test, deployment, monitoring, and even setting up this overall pipeline as well. All of that can be done through Jenkins. Again, we'll see the power of that as we'll move ahead. Now, team, do you remember, or can you identify this shark here? Oh, no, sorry, well, it's a well. Really sorry for that. Yeah. Can you identify what this tool is? Excellent, excellent. Vaibhav as well, Mahesh as well. Great. And team, this is none other than our Docker. Right. Now, Docker or Docker Hub, you might have heard it. Or even I'll put it in a simpler words, we refer to those as containers, right? Which our well is carrying. You see these one. These are what we refer to as the containers. Now, team, you see in the world that we're living today, isn't it? We are all looking for some sort of standardization. Right? We are all looking for having standardization. In fact, you see, even I bought my iPhone, I believe, sometime back, 15, isn't it? A year or so back. And it is now supporting USB-C as well, right? For the charging port. Now, you see, this is the kind of standardization you see we are looking for in today's world. We don't want uniqueness at times because that will add to the kind of inconvenience at times, isn't it? So the idea here is that standardization in terms of application deployment, standardization in terms of setting up your environment, standardization in terms of processes is what the containers they bring. They make your applications, independent of the underlying platform. They can, in fact, if I'll just give an idea just before, we're going to discuss this in detail later on. But just to give an idea, in the 18th century, earlier, when the ships used to carry the goods from one place to the other, right? Because the volume, the size, the shape, the weight of each good used to be different, it was kind of an headache for the ships back then to carry the goods from place A to place B. And then came the concept of these containers, where irrespective of what good that you're carrying within, isn't it? Because of that standardized structure that's outside, the ships, they were no more worried or concerned about your goods as much. Because you see, because we had a standard size of the containers around, we know how we can carry them. We know how we can even offload them. We can onboard them and everything, and we can transport them and everything, right? That brought in the standardization. That's where the concept of containers came from. Now, technically, how we can create those, technically, how we can manage those, technically, how we can overall orchestrate those, that's exactly what is going to be the discussion that will begin here under Docker. I'm sure you must have heard of this concept before, but this is a very, very important approach, or rather a common practice in DevOps to make use of containers for bringing in that standardization. And it also encourages what we call to be microservices approach. Don't worry, these are some heavy terms, I know, if you're not aware of it, but that's exactly what we'll be exploring as we'll begin this learning. Now, team, can you identify with this will? This is very kind of in line with what we have seen with the Docker. I'll give you a big hint. That's what the hint is. Have you seen this? Do you know what this wheel is? All right, very well, Mahesh. So this wheel, team, we refer to it as Kubernetes. Again, like I told you, that just like for Jenkins, I told you that you might be aware of Jenkins or not, but you must be. You might not have used Jenkins or not. You may have used it or not, but one thing is for sure that you are aware of Jenkins. You have heard that word Jenkins before. Same goes with Kubernetes for sure, that you might not have used it as much or not, even neither at all, not at all, but still I'm sure that you must have heard this word some other time. And that's how big and how popular this tool is. Okay. But right now, again, team, this is a elaborative discussion that we'll have on Kubernetes. What is that and all? But just remember that in the previous case, like I told you, that you see, when you have fewer containers like this, it is fine that you can manage those. But when you have hundreds and thousands of such containers, this is again a concept that's dealing with containers as well, Docker containers. Now, when you have such thousands of containers, then managing those containers is a big headache. In fact, that's not possible practically. So, in order to orchestrate your containers, in order to orchestrate your containers, we require, now what is mean by orchestration, by the way? Just to give an idea, orchestration means when I have such thousands of containers, no, I have to make sure that they can be placed properly on the machines. I have to make sure that I can scale them or increase the number of the containers and decrease those containers depending on my traffic. I want to make sure if at all it's required to have some some load balancing across them. I have to make sure that the health of them is, fine working with those. Isn't it? So there are a lot of aspects from the management perspective, and that's exactly what you'll be understanding as one of the very, very popular tool in the open source world. We call it the Kubernetes. Okay, so team, Kubernetes, believe me, this is a very go-to tool for many companies. They are using it on premises. In fact, now that we are using cloud as well, many cloud platforms, they have one or the other way to support this Kubernetes. For example, if you know AWS, it is supporting EKS. Okay, so even same goes with your Azure or GCP. It is so popular that every cloud platform had to take the notice of it and had to set up an environment for this Kubernetes orchestration. Okay, so that's exactly what we'll be looking at, team. Believe me, upskilling with this Kubernetes will help you immensely going in for or upskilling yourself further or extending, kind of exploring yourself in the DevOps world. In the DevOps world, this is a very, very popular tool and you are expected that you are aware of it. Don't worry, that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be understanding what Kubernetes is as we move ahead. Now, this is a bit tricky, but I hope you can understand it. I've just kind of removed the name from here, just edited it a bit. Can you identify it, what this is? Anyone? Simple, in fact. With the letter, you can identify that. Mahesh has, in fact, identified that pretty quickly. Yes, team. This is nothing but Ansible. Now, you see, let's just say that your company is having, in fact, it is in the red. I'll just draw it over here. Let's just say your company is having such tens, if not hundreds of machines in its production environment. And this is a very common use case, right? It's a very common scenario rather, that your companies will be dealing with hundreds of machines or tens of machines at once. But the problem is that, let's just say I want to do a small task. For example, I want to run a small command on them. Okay, I want to update. I want to run a small command on each one of them. Now, what will happen, team, is that in the traditional way, I have to go individually about those. Individually, I have to configure those. Now, think about if you have hundreds and thousands of servers, how much time this will take. Right? So, the idea is that managing huge infrastructures or huge number of resources automatically, or rather, in fact, rather than saying automatically, I want to manage them from a central place. I want to manage them from, for example, from a single machine instead of doing the repetitive task, right? You see, configuring hundreds or thousands of machines manually, how much of wastage and how much of inefficient process this is, right? You're not adding any value to the revenue. You're not adding any value to the application. Neither you are adding anything to the revenue of the company, and you are just literally wasting your time configuring the resources one by one. That's where, team, a tool like Ansible comes into picture. What it does for you, it gives you configuration management. Right? Don't worry, that's exactly we'll be discussing as well. The real power and the real value of what is Ansible. How do we use it? In fact, with the demonstrations and with examples as well, we'll be understanding that. I'll be showing you, okay, how we can make use of it for managing, accessing, and overall controlling multiple resources from a central place. And that's what we want, right? From the DevOps perspective, you want automation as much as possible. You want to make sure that you can control the things without much of the manual intervention. right? So that's exactly, team, what we'll be exploring as a part of that tool over there. Okay, and then I have this one of my favorite ones out there. Can you identify this one? This is a bit tricky. Let's just see if you can. Can you identify this logo, the middle one? That is saying that you can support everything. Exactly. I think Mahesh is able to answer most of the things. I think others, you're just waiting. But I hope you must have already understood. No worries if you're not aware of it as well. That's what we will be doing as a part of this course. This is Terraform. Right. So team, Terraform, you see, is, as we'll see over there, okay, as in fact, Terraform, okay, as we discussed about your Ansible earlier. Ansible was for configuration management. Terraform is identified with a particular word. We call it IAC. Now, what is IAC? Infrastructure as a code. Now, what do I mean by that? So we just have a look at this diagram that I've drawn earlier, right? You can see over here, I told you that we want to provision our infrastructure in order for this hardware to be set up, right? So that's exactly what we're doing here is in order to provision our required infrastructure, in order to provision our required environment, right? We want a service that can do it automatically. Now, you see, otherwise, what I can do is I can go ahead and create one thing or one machine or one resource at a time, right? Manually. But remember, team, in DevOps, there is no place for manual creations. Okay, AWS, or rather even generally as well, DevOps has a big no to manually doing anything. You have to do all of the things automatically as much as possible. And here, from the infrastructure point of view, the automation can be brought in with the service called Terraform. It's a fantastic service. You will see, in fact, it supports all the major cloud platforms. You don't need to worry about that. You just, the only thing that you have to do is to provide your infrastructure, whatever kind of machines, whatever kind of resources, whatever kind of services you want as a code. Okay. And once you provide that, Terraform will take up that job and start building the infrastructure for you. Okay. Now, team, these are some of the major things that I've just outlined here. But as we'll go further, in fact, during this learning I believe from the next week, I don't know, but during our learning, we'll be exploring many more things that are considered to be the best practices within the DevOps environment. These are some of the major tools I just wanted to give you an idea of. Okay. And this is exactly what I just wanted to discuss with you is what is the overall what is this word of DevOps that we are going into? What are the major technologies and the tools that we are supposed to be aware of? And along with that as well, we'll be exploring how we can make use of them and how we can configure them to basically use it in, for example, our real world projects or upskill ourselves onto DevOps. Okay. And team, you see again, like I told, that the companies, why they are looking for DevOps, as I've told you, the generations old or kind of decades old problem, I would rather say, was that the development and operations, they were not working hand in hand. It was creating major problems in the software development. It used to take literally 6 months, 1 year to carry out a single upgrade. Right? And that's what the DevOps has taken down for us. It has made sure to make this entire process as quick as possible, make this entire process as efficient and as reliable as possible. And how do we do it? That's exactly what we'll be learning as we move ahead. Okay. So team, that's it from my side for now. If you have any question, I don't want to extend the time as well. If you have any question, please do let me know around this discussion. Okay. But otherwise, I'm done with my discussion with you that I wanted to give you an idea what exactly is basically is the overall scope of our learning. Yes, team? Any doubt, any question that you have? But one thing for sure I'll tell you is that if you check for the DevOps, in fact, you might be upskilling yourself, you might be looking for a switch into your job, or you might be looking for going on for an DevOps domain now. But if you just go randomly as well and check for the profile, I mean, the kind of expectation uh, the recruiters are having from a DevOps engineer or the DevOps kind of profile, you will see that you will have this mention of these important tools there. And that's why over the years of kind of experience that I have with the kind of questions and the kind of expectations the recruiters are having, we have made sure to kind of assemble the things together into this learning just to make sure that for your upskilling, for your switch, or for your basically making sure that you are exploring in the world of DevOps, you'll be benefited with that. With that, team, I'm done with my discussion and my the things that I wanted to convey to you. Any question if you have, you can unmute yourself and discuss with me. Otherwise, I think I'm done for this part. Yes, Kumar, you have a question? Kumar, I think you are on mute. If you are saying something, sorry.
Is accidentally.
All right. So team, can you please confirm in the chat box if the things that we have discussed until now, they're all clear? A quick yes will be great, everyone. Let me just know in the chat box if the things are clear, what we have discussed until now. And what's the overall great. Excellent. So thank you, team. Thank you very much. I'll be really eager and really glad. I mean, I'm really glad to meet all of you. In fact, right now as well, and I'll be really looking forward to meet you again in the upcoming sessions for this course, and we'll be exploring this fantastic world of DevOps as we go ahead. Okay. So team, that's it from my side. Most probably, Abhinash, I think the course might begin the next week. I mean, I think the team will reach out to you. I just don't want to call out anything about that, but team will reach out to you and they will convey the same with you as well. Okay. All right, team. So thank you very much. That's it from my side. And yeah, I'll see you.